Top 10 Most Evil Kids in History. Number 10. Paula Cooper. The narrative unfolds in Gary, Indiana, where a disturbing incident involved a 15-year-old named Paula Cooper. Instead of attending school, she opted for a day of rebellion, engaging in activities like smoking marijuana and consuming beer. Shockingly, her actions escalated to a brutal attack on an elderly woman, during which she stabbed the victim 33 times with a foot-long butcher knife. Despite arguments in her defense highlighting a troubled upbringing, Cooper initially received a death sentence. The decision sparked widespread outrage, prompting Indiana to raise the minimum age for the death penalty from 10 to 16. Subsequently, Cooper's sentence was commuted to life, and she served 26 years before reportedly taking her own life shortly after release. Number 9. Jasmine Richardson. In the peaceful setting of small-town Canada in April 2006, a gruesome and shocking crime unfolded involving 12-year-old Jasmine Richardson and her 23-year-old boyfriend, Jeremy Steinke. The unsettling details of the case include the couple's claimed involvement in a disturbing subculture, with Steinke asserting that he was a 300-year-old werewolf. The tragic events took a dark turn when Richardson and Steinke fatally stabbed Jasmine's mother, father, and younger brother. The apparent motivation for these brutal murders was rooted in the disapproval of Jasmine's parents, who understandably objected to their 12-year-old daughter being romantically involved with an adult man. Despite her young age, Jasmine Richardson was not exempt from legal consequences. She was found guilty, and the Canadian legal system, recognizing the severity of the crime committed by a minor, imposed a 10-year sentence, the maximum penalty for offenders under the age of 14. This decision reflected the gravity of the actions and the need for accountability, even for those who have not yet reached adulthood. After serving her sentence, Jasmine Richardson was released in May of 2016, marking the end of a deeply disturbing chapter in the annals of small-town Canada. The case not only highlighted the vulnerability of young individuals influenced by disturbing relationships, but also brought attention to the complexity surrounding juvenile criminal responsibility within the legal system. Number 8. Anissa Weier and Morgan Geyser. The dark influence of creepy stories manifested in a chilling incident involving 12-year-olds Anissa Weier and Morgan Geyser, who planned to kill their classmate Peyton Leutner. The disturbing plot unfolded after Weier and Geyser spent a night together at a sleepover. Motivated by a belief in the fictional character Slender Man, the girls hatched a plan to murder Leutner, thinking it would protect their families from the imagined threat posed by this sinister entity. Executing their sinister plan, Weier and Geyser lured Leutner into a forest, where they brutally attacked her. They pinned her to the ground and stabbed her 19 times before callously leaving her for dead. Miraculously, Leutner managed to crawl to a nearby road, where she was discovered by a passing cyclist. Despite the severity of her injuries, she ultimately made a full recovery. In the legal aftermath, Weier and Geyser were tried and found to be mentally unstable, leading to their commitment to mental institutions. This unsettling case underscored the potential harm that dark and fantastical narratives can inflict on impressionable minds, revealing the dangerous consequences when fiction blurs with reality in the minds of young individuals. Number 7. Shinji Manado. Seemingly without motive, 4 Japanese teens, including Shinji Manado, abducted high school student Junko Furuta in 1988, and after raping her multiple times, took her to Minado's parents' house. There, Furuta was reportedly raped as many as 400 times, tortured, mutilated, and humiliated for 40 days. Furuta would eventually die from the abuse, leading the perpetrators to wrap her body and dispose of her in a 55-gallon drum of wet concrete. Due to the severity of her torture, Furuta could only be identified by her fingerprints. The boys, meanwhile, were tried and sentenced, with Miyano, the supposed leader, receiving a 20-year sentence. Number 6. T.J. Lane. On February 27, 2012, a horrifying incident unfolded at Charlton High School when 17-year-old T.J. Lane, armed with a .22 caliber handgun, entered the cafeteria and initiated a devastating attack. With a chilling assertion that he had selected his targets arbitrarily, Lane's shooting spree resulted in 3 fatalities and left 3 others injured, one of whom suffered permanent paralysis. Although initially detained as a juvenile, Lane was ultimately tried as an adult and handed down 3 life sentences for his heinous actions. Throughout the trial, Lane exhibited an alarming lack of remorse. His shocking demeanor was underscored when he arrived at his sentencing, wearing a t-shirt emblazoned with the word "killer" across the chest. Adding to the distress, Lane callously informed the families of his victims that he derived perverse satisfaction from reminiscing about the memory of their loved ones' murders. The events at Chardon High School stand as a stark reminder of the profound impact of senseless violence on a community, leaving scars that extend far beyond the physical injuries inflicted on that tragic day. Number 5. Cindy Collier and Shirley Wolfe. In a disturbing turn of events, Cindy Collier and Shirley Wolfe, having recently acquainted each other, devised a plan to steal a car from a retirement community. They targeted Anna Brackett, an elderly woman in her mid-80s, who unsuspectingly allowed them into her home. For an hour, the duo engaged in conversation with Brackett, until Collier discovered a knife and Wolfe initiated a brutal stabbing attack on the elderly woman. Tragically, after witnessing Brackett bleed to death, Collier and Wolfe realized they had taken the wrong car key, and to further complicate matters, the vehicle they intended to steal was a manual, rendering them unable to drive it. Adding a chilling dimension to the heinous act, Wolfe documented the murder in her diary, describing it as lots of fun. Both Collier and Wolfe were sentenced as juveniles and, unsettlingly, were released in the early 1990s. This disturbing episode serves as a stark reminder of the callousness that can arise from seemingly trivial criminal intentions, leaving a community grappling with the aftermath of a senseless and brutal act. Number 4. Alyssa Bustaman. Alyssa Bustaman is an American woman who gained notoriety for a gruesome crime committed when she was a teenager. In 2009, at the age of 15, Bustaman lured her 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Olton, into the woods in St. Martins, Missouri, under the pretext of playing. Once there, Bustaman brutally attacked and murdered Elizabeth. After the crime, Bustaman buried Elizabeth's body in a shallow grave and later wrote in her journal about the thrill she experienced from the killing. Bustaman was eventually apprehended, and in 2012, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and armed criminal action. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. The case drew significant media attention due to the brutality of the crime and Bustaman's age at the time of the murder. It also raised questions about the role of mental health and the impact of environmental factors on criminal behavior in young individuals. Number 3. Melinda Loveless, Lori Tackett, Tony Lawrence, and Hope Rippey. The case involving Melinda Loveless, Lori Tackett, Hope Rippey, and Tony Lawrence is a horrifying example of teenage violence that shocked the public. In 1992, when they were between the ages of 15 and 17, the girls abducted 12-year-old Shanda Scherer from her father's house. The motive behind the crime stemmed from a love triangle involving Loveless and another girl. The perpetrators took Scherer to the woods, where she was subjected to a brutal and prolonged attack. Forced to strip naked, she was beaten, stabbed, and strangled. When these methods failed to end her life, Tackett resorted to beating her with a tire iron. In a final act of cruelty, Scherer was taken to a field, set on fire, and left to die. The brutality of the crime sent shockwaves through the community. In the legal aftermath, the 4 girls faced justice for their roles in the heinous crime. Tony Lawrence received a 20-year sentence, while Tackett and Loveless were sentenced to 60 years each. Rippey initially received a 60-year sentence, which was later reduced to 35 years. The case underscored the devastating consequences of unchecked teenage violence and the tragic loss of a young life caught in the midst of a disturbing love triangle. Number 2. Eric Smith. At a young age, Eric Smith was diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder, and he was constantly bullied for his glasses, red hair, and freckles. Unfortunately, his mental health and his constant torment were a terrible combination that led to terrible consequences. At 13, Smith lured 4-year-old Derek Roby into the woods. He then strangled the boy, squashed his head with a large rock, and sodomized his corpse with a stick. After confessing to his mother a few days later, she gave him up to authorities, and he was sentenced to 9 years to life, the maximum sentence for a juvenile. He has since been denied parole on 8 separate occasions. Number 1. Joshua Phillips. The disturbing case of Joshua Phillips unfolded in 1998 when, at the age of 14, he bludgeoned his 8-year-old neighbor to death and concealed her body beneath his bed. The horrifying discovery occurred 7 days later, when Phillips' mother noticed something leaking from beneath the bed. Phillips then claimed that he had accidentally struck Maddie in the eye with his baseball bat, causing her to scream. In a state of panic, he brought her to his home, where he allegedly struck her again and ultimately stabbed her 11 times. However, Phillips' account failed to convince a Florida jury, and he was convicted of first-degree murder. The severity of the crime led to Phillips receiving an adult penalty, a decision that continues to be a point of contention. His mother is appealing his conviction, arguing against the imposition of an adult penalty for a crime committed when he was a juvenile. The case underscores the complexity surrounding juvenile justice and the challenging decisions faced by legal systems when determining the appropriate consequences for crimes committed by individuals who are still in their formative years. Would you like it? Hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more interesting and informative videos.